Le Mans. What is normally a quiet drive through the French countryside 50 weeks a year turns into a rapid, exhausting, death-defying test of humankind and its creations for 24 hours in the middle of June. This is the story of these very roads and the fastest production cars to ever grace them. This is the story of GT1. This story begins in a different era of sports car racing. By the beginning of the 1990s, Group C beasts were reaching speeds of over 250 miles per hour down the Mulsanne Straight. Velocity never before seen in circuit racing of any kind. Velocity that the FIA wanted reduced. The new engine regulations reduced that top speed, but also priced many teams out of the category. The exodus of teams following this ruling resulted in the FIA canceling the 1993 World Sports Car Championship and the collapse of the series as a whole. Simultaneously, a new GT racing formula was being developed for the creation of a new championship to fill that void. The GT1 category was born. This series would be created as the BPR Global GT Series, its inaugural season being quite peculiar, as no season-long point standings were kept and every race was treated as a standalone event. This meant that factory-supported teams had the opportunity to hone in on their cars throughout the season before a proper championship would begin the following year. This first season of GT1 mainly consisted of modified versions of pre-existing GT cars competing for the category. But the writing was on the wall, and even in its first 24-hour test, the category would show its first true sparks of brilliance. GT1 would make its 1994 debut at Le Mans among four other classes. The IMSA GT Supreme, the loud, powerful, heavy GT cars that quite frankly resemble something you'd see at a NASCAR race. The LMGT2 category, which resembles your standard GT cars. Very heavily modified production cars designed to compete in endurance events. The LMWSC category, a heavily modified car for the aging Group C, with flat floors and pretty iconic open cockpits. The LMP2 category featuring even more restricted Group C machines, and then the new kid in town, the GT1 category. Due to the newness of the category, homologation rules were laughably relaxed for what was supposed to be a win on Sunday, sell on Monday production car category. A previous effort to produce road-going cars using the Porsche Group C 962 chassis meant that the dour Porsche 962 effort was allowed to enter the race as a GT1 car, and it outright won. Yeah, that's right. The first ever Le Mans winner in GT1 was a nearly 10-year-old Group C car. (1995) is when we see the whole picture come together. Homologated race cars, purpose-built for the new category, would give us beautiful, rapid, competitive cars on the road and track, capable of winning overall endurance races. The first to strike, the BMW-powered McLaren F1. The Gulf team would take victory in the opening two rounds at Jerez and Paul Ricard, before winning rounds 4 and 5, separated only by the West competition victory at Monza in round 3. West would solidify themselves as a serious threat to the Gulf team with a round 5 win at Donington. Just a few weeks before Le Mans, and the McLaren F1 has won every race it's entered. It's time for the moment we've all been waiting for. It's the first proper GT1 race at the Circuit de la Sarthe, the 1995 24 Hours of Le Mans. The 63rd running of the fastest 24 hours in the world is finally here. We have 4 classes overall, with 2 of them fighting for the overall victory, the WSC prototypes and the new and improved GT1. Everyone expects the prototypes to take the win. After all, they've been battle-tested over the years, and they have the power advantage. The tricolor drops, and all are set to battle it out on the 13.5-kilometer French public roads. As the festivities began, nobody was prepared for what was coming from above. Rain began to fall early on into the event, and kept falling. The lack of grip ended up favoring the GT1, and with reliability issues taking the other GTs out, the BMW-powered McLarens were the talk of the town. 24 hours later, 17 of which were in the wet, and the McLaren stranglehold on the field resulted in them securing the win and 4 out of the top 5 overall finishers, only surrendering second to the Porsche-powered Courage prototype, who actually spun and crashed early on into the race with Mario Andretti behind the wheel. By the end of June 1995, the McLaren F1 was the car to beat, and seemingly the future of GT1. 1996 saw the release of Ferrari's GT1 effort, the F40. Their entrant wouldn't hold a candle to the F1, as the F40 would win just a single event all year. But while Ferrari failed to develop a car capable of dethroning the F1, endurance racing's most successful manufacturer was cooking something up, and would debut on the biggest stage. It's time to talk about the Porsche 911 GT1. With the blood of the 962 coursing through its veins, the 911 GT1 debuted at the 1996 Le Mans 24-hour, much to the dismay of the other GT1 teams competing. Locking out the first two spots in class, the two Porsche entries blew the doors off the rest of the GT1 competition. Okay, so what, they're fast. This is Le Mans. It's 24 hours of grueling competition, and this is just their first outing. McLaren has strength in numbers and a season and a half's worth of data to work with. There's no way Porsche can hit it out of the park on attempt number 1.
Positions, victory for the Yost Porsche, 1 lap ahead of the second place number 25 car, Wallach, Stuck and Bootson.
Okay, so Porsche hit it out of the park on attempt number 1, but there's always next year. Let's regroup and come back in 1997. The BPR Championship is acquired by the FIA, becoming the FIA GT Championship, and it largely stayed the same, minus the schedule moving from mostly older touring circuits to much larger, faster circuits, better equipped to handle that style of racing. Also new to the championship are 3 new GT1 entries: the Ford-powered Panos, the Lotus featuring a variety of engine types, and the second entry out of Germany, the Mercedes CLK GTR. Germany already had more than solid representation in the championship, with the BMW fielding a Works McLaren entry and the Porsche monster. Now Mercedes is making their endurance return after a 6-year hiatus. Oddly enough, however, Porsche's Works entries didn't commit to a full GT championship run, and the races they did enter, they only managed a best finish as second in the final race at Laguna Seca. The other 2 German teams would dominate the year, however, trading wins with Mercedes at 6 and BMW at 5 respectively. And in their first outing, the brand new Mercedes would win the 97 GT World title. Despite this dominance, they decided to sit out the 1997 running of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, while they developed a Le Mans specialized entry for the 98 race. Porsche showed up strong once again at Le Mans in 1997, but this time they brought some privateer friends. Now with 8 total entries compared to last year's 2, McLaren showed up with 6 total entries, headlined by the BMW Works cars. The Works teams would be stricken with mechanical problems, however. With the Porsche retirement and BMW having their own issues, the privateer Gulf McLaren team would return to the podium, taking the GT1 win in 2nd place overall. The GT1 formula would actually begin the year outside of Europe, with a handful of entries in the 24 Hours of Daytona and the 12 Hours of Sebring. On top of its already impressive resume, the 911 GT1 would win the Daytona 24, and would finish second to the Ford-powered Panos entry at Sebring. In Europe, however, the rising cost of this production car's arm race was taking its toll, as the FIA GT Championship saw a drastic drop in entries from 35 total entries in 1997 down to just 14 in 1998. The most notable entry missing from the championship was the Works BMW, which decided to shift its efforts towards LMP1 racing this year. Mercedes chose to debut their new sleeker, more aerodynamic Le Mans variant CLK at the 3rd race of the season in Hockenheim. Mercedes would go on to win every single round of the championship in '98, picking up 1-2 finishes in 6 of the 10 events. They had a clear stranglehold on the championship for the 2nd year in a row. But the GT championship was an afterthought. They wanted to stand on the top step at Le Mans. They threw everything they had at the field, securing a 1st and 3rd place in qualifying, with Porsche taking 4th and 5th, while the new Toyota GT1 took 2nd, 7th, and 8th, turning heads with surprising speed in their first outing. The GT1 qualifying dominance gave hope to fans worldwide that a production car could finally win at Le Mans again, not having seen that happen since McLaren took victory in 1995. The 2 remaining Gulf McLaren F1s that at one time were so dominant have now qualified last in the GT1 field. Mercedes' first outing at Le Mans would go terribly, as reliability caused both entries to retire early on into the event, while disaster struck Toyota as well, seeing one of their cars retire early, and with about 2 hours left, the other Toyota seemed poised for victory. All they needed to do was pace until the time ran out. That was until a gearbox failure caused the car to slow on the Mulsanne straight, retiring from the event. The heartbreak for the Japanese entry was jubilation for the Porsche Germans, who secured a 1-2 victory and the final Le Mans overall win for a GT1 and for production cars. More attempts to grow endurance racing in the US saw the creation of the Petite Le Mans at Road Atlanta. The 10-hour race at the hilly, fast-paced circuit was the start of a well-loved tradition carried on to today. And on pole for the GT1 class was the Porsche, who by this point had elevated themselves as the premier GT1 team. However, down the back straightaway, the front end of the car lifted off the ground and sent it tumbling end over end into the sky, before landing on its rear and nosing into the wall. That really was an interesting crash. But surely that's just a freak incident and we won't see it again. Due to the high rising cost and the extreme Mercedes domination, the number of GT1 entries for the 1999 FIA GT Championship were so low that the FIA decided to axe the formula altogether. Instead, the GT2 category would be the only class racing in the championship this season, eventually making way for the GT World Challenge Europe Series we know today. At Le Mans, while the GT1 category by name was dead, a new class, the LMGTP, was created to allow for a transition from the existing GT1 cars still racing, but to be classified as closed cockpit prototypes. This class consisted of the Toyotas, Mercedes, and a new entry, Audi, who had developed a closed cockpit prototype, the R8C, which performed so dismally that they canned the project, instead deciding to focus on the R8R, an open cockpit car that finished 3rd and 4th overall in the race. In LMGTP, Toyota would earn some redemption, winning the class and finishing 2nd overall. This race was meant to be a farewell to the class that had gained so much popularity worldwide, allowing some of the fastest road cars turned prototypes to have one last hurrah down the Mulsanne Straight. But remember that flip from Road Atlanta in 1998? What happens during the week of the 1999 Le Mans 24 Hours is going to blow that out of the water. Due to the high speeds, low downforce, and a long nose on the front of the Mercedes, high pressure air would build up on the front of the car, generating lift. When this happens on fast straightaways, especially with changes in elevation or bumps, the likelihood of liftoff is compounded. During qualifying, Mark Webber's car would go airborne and crash. Friday, the team was allowed to rebuild the car in hopes of starting the race on Saturday, and the team was successful. They'd be able to compete in the remaining events of the weekend. Prior to the race on Saturday morning, the cars would hit the track for morning warm-up, where, drafting behind his teammates, Webber would go airborne again on the Mulsanne Straight and slide on his roof into the corner. The car would be withdrawn from the race. Mercedes, who at this point was undoubtedly in panic mode, installed winglets to the other two cars in hopes of increasing downforce to counteract the lift being generated. Ultimately, this didn't make a difference, as for the third time on lap 75, the number 5 Mercedes LMGTP entry would go airborne, flip off the track, and land among the trees. This time, however, it was all caught on camera. Mercedes, who unfortunately is no stranger to catastrophe at Le Mans, withdrew the remaining entry and has yet to return to prototype racing in any capacity. And that is how GT1 ends. The class that for years was a high-speed, diverse, fun category for racing fans worldwide would end just as it started, teams being priced out of the sport and speed becoming too dangerous to ignore. Despite the slow death of GT1 and the terror in its final races, it continues to be loved by race fans today. I hope you all enjoyed. Please consider leaving a like or even subscribing if you love all things motorsport. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Go out and support your local racetracks, and have a good day.